So I'm going to just make sure this is abundantly clear. This migration shouldn't be optional. I can get it done later. As we kick the can down the road more and more, it becomes a bigger and bigger problem because then you're going to have a lot of privacy and confidentiality issues that you don't want.
Welcome to Shielded, the last line of cyber defense by PQ Shield, the podcast where we are moving the conversation around post-quantum cryptography from the why to the how. I'm Joe Lintzen, your host, and I'm here to guide you through the challenges, innovations, and solutions that will help your organization stay secure in the quantum era. Let's future-proof your defenses together.
The quantum threat isn't some distant theoretical risk. It's real, it's imminent, and it demands action now. Today, we're joined by Dr. Garfield Jones, Associate Chief of Strategic Technology at the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. Dr. Jones has been leading efforts to secure critical infrastructure against emerging threats, including the seismic shift to post-quantum cryptography. In this episode, we'll discuss how government and private sector organizations can prepare for quantum migration using the APA methodology, where APA stands for Awareness, Preparedness, and Action. We'll also dive into the crucial role of supply chain security, policy, and procurement in ensuring a seamless cryptographic transition. Garfield, welcome to Shielded, the last line of cyber defense.
Thank you. Thanks.
Now, before we dive into the quantum security landscape, I have to ask, your APA methodology, when we spoke in preparation for this call, of course, it's for PQ migration, but it also compares planning for cryptographic transition to planning a date. So tell us about that analogy. How does it help organizations understand the importance of starting early? And why is post-quantum migration maybe a little more complex than just booking a nice restaurant?
I guess my analogy to that is, um, when you're going out on a date, let's just put it as the first date because this is the first time we're really going into the quantum space, and really, you want to make a good impression. You don't want to be late. You want to look good. You want to make sure everything is all is prepared nicely. You've booked the restaurant. You've booked. You've got your car working. I'm sure all of us have had that time when the car broke down right before the date, but um, that's something you've got to prepare for. So understanding that you have to prepare early, the earlier you prepare and get ready for this date, which everyone calls Q date, the earlier you prepare for that, the better it is overall because the more secure you're going to be as a organization and as a nation. So that's kind of where that analogy kind of ran into. Um, the awareness, preparedness, and action. I'm just going to, if you don't mind, just kind of make sure I tell a little bit about that. Is hopefully it's not a copyright issue because I know there's a APA style or APA format. But the awareness is basically understanding your assets. Knowing the software, the hardware, the networks, and then working with your organization's leadership and people to kind of get that get them educated in the right space. The preparedness, of course, is includes that the migration, the PQC activities. So we're going to say that prioritizing migration tasks, budgeting, adding PQC requirements to all IT and basically any kind of acquisition. And then lastly, of course, the action is make sure that we include those migration tasks in product updates and product replacements, system upgrades, patches, all those things for that add to PQC capabilities. So that's kind of where the awareness, preparedness, and its action comes from.
Absolutely, yeah, and of course there is a roadmap that the DHS has put out there for PQ migration, And that, of course, concretes, many steps for organizations to prepare and then eventually migrate. Now, if you were advising maybe a Fortune 500 company or even, a government agency, given your role, just starting the journey, which there are many that are just starting the journey, um, you know, what are sort of the first three things that they should, start doing today to avoid being caught off guard and being late?
So I think the most important thing on this, and when we're looking at, DHS has a roadmap already out, right? And I think the things that I look at for advising a company is, or an organization, is establish a PQC migration project with a lead, with someone that can, they always talk about champions, and you need a champion in your organization for PQC, that's really going to be, um, involved, and not taking this as, oh, it's just another project. It isn't another project. This is really important for organizations, to be secure, to maintain their data, to have their assets secure. And the IP is really important to a lot of organizations, to include the government. Um, Intellectual property. So the other part I would say is the inventory. Determine where you have that a vulnerable type cryptography, in use today, so that you can kind of update that, and start understanding where that is. And I think we've done that on the government side, especially with OMB 2302, that we've done that. And then start planning your migration tasks. What does it look like? A lot of people are talking about transition, in terms of, should we go to hybrid? Should we have backwards compatibility? Are things in there that we need to think about? And I think it's based on you for organizational risks. What do you need? Do you still need to communicate with the public? Are you military assets that you can do? It's not going to be a straight flip over, but I think those are the things that you need to look at on the roadmap. Getting that champion, getting that project established, understanding your inventory, and then really start moving towards the task, getting that vendor information, getting it into your acquisition documents.
Well, and you mentioned compatibility and in particular backwards compatibility, and I think if we, relate that with an organization that maybe has a lot of infrastructure out there, they likely won't just rip and replace their existing cryptographic systems overnight. So how can they find a balance in that transition towards PQC, while still maintaining that compatibility with their existing infrastructure, be it internal or external?
Yeah, so I think, we can expect, like, software vendors will be, providing some kind of technology and protocol updates, right, which will ensure backward compatibility, and sometimes it's some seamless migration. We've seen that in the industry as today. I don't want to name any vendors, because I get in trouble if I name vendors. Um, so it is we could say that, in organizations, there's not going to be an even switch. It's going to take a number of years. So in organizations, you might want to look at what are the most forward facing areas that we as an organization have, and then try to migrate those over as quickly as possible. What are some of them that have, important data, that we have to be concerned about the data lifecycle on that. In terms of, the organizations, they have to understand their assets. So that's why I said that's like the number two thing you need to do, because you need to understand where backward compatibility is going to work, where it's going to be an issue, and then, where you might have to use something like middleware or proxies to use instead. So I mean, these are challenges that we're, we're going through right now. There's, I mean, like for us, it's the smart cards. We've got challenges with that, and some of the smaller devices. So some of the smaller devices and less updatable devices are going to require probably a rip and replace because of how they're going. But these are the areas that you have to start getting that plan in place of these are my organizational elements that are facing the public that I need to have some kind of backward compatibility with.
Even more important to inventorize and find those smaller resource constrained devices, right? And then add
Yeah.
them to the list of maybe this section is not upgradable. And then I think listening to you, you've raised another important point, and that is, of course, inventory is sort of the internal view, where your vendors, your providers, that's sort of the external view, right? So and we look at that as the digital supply chain, and of course procurement comes into focus pretty quickly, right? So as those organizations procure their IT solutions and software and services, is there any recommendation that you can give that what should they be including in their contracts today to ensure that they have this forward-looking, future proofness within their procurement, within the solutions that they're buying today, um, with working with their vendors, working with their digital supply chain.
Yeah, and when you look at, I mean, PQC migration is a must, right? It should be included in any kind of acquisition activities you're looking at from now on. I mean, with NIST releasing their algorithms, that should be first and foremost in as are we working with vendors that are looking to move to this migration, and if they're not, then you need to really look at moving someplace else. And that's the thing with supply chain is like there's other people out there that will do some of the same services or provide the same products. So I think for these um, you have to look at and on our roadmap, that is one of the most important things that we look at is the migration, is the acquisition of products as we move forward. We're not waiting until 2035. That's our date for full migration. We're not waiting until then. We want to be able to have those products in there and ready so that we don't have to be like, well, we have to do a whole flip, and then it becomes a even bigger problem because now it's a rush and mistakes are made. We've got a good runway right here, so use it. Use that time to really make your organization a safe space and get those acquisition products ready.
100%. Yeah, couldn't agree more. So on that procurement side, I mean, one thing that being in cybersecurity for several decades, oftentimes there's a lot of snake oil that is being proposed and sold
Yeah.
in that environment as well. So with the whole quantum safe migration discussion, do you see a risk that organizations might rush with quantum safe solutions that aren't actually compliant? And you did mention it, right? It's the compliance to standards, that is really key in all of this. So if there is a risk, how can we, or how does CISA help mitigate that risk and sort of point organizations to the good list, so to speak? It's like, here are vendors that are following this standard.
So we are in the process of evaluating some of the, we call them automated cryptographic discovery and inventory tools, ACDI. So we put out a publication on ACDI on the strategy for automating cryptographic using automated tools, and we're working with NIST to kind of not really evaluate, just see what some of these tools can do in terms of and looking at our agencies. Uh, that we're working with, especially on the federal government. You're looking at some of the bigger, in terms of size, in terms of are they federated, non-federated, things like that. So we have certain criteria, we have certain use cases that we're setting up for these ACDI tools to be able to kind of further just give you information of what their capabilities are. We're not pitting one vendor against another vendor. We're just making sure that we can fill these gaps. In our strategy, we've talked about using a manual side as well. Using there's manual human is always a little bit. Using a human is always it's a failsafe. So we're talking about using that in combination with the ACDI tools until we get more and more um, a better idea of how they work and their accuracy. So you're going to have some errors on both sides, including the human side. But we're also we want to make sure that these ACDI tools, they aren't telling us we've got 500 assets and then we only have 250. So we want to make sure that they're able to give us the right answers.
Yeah. Well, no, and oftentimes it might take a human to make sense of the results, to make sense of the inventory, and peel back those layers a bit more, and decide on the acceptable risk within defining that roadmap, and planning for those next steps, right? Um, so
Yeah,
um,
that's a great point there.
so I think I mean a lot of this transition is driven by regulations. Obviously, you did mention NIST. Of course, there's a close collaboration between NIST and CISA. Um, eh, Despite the fact, I mean, regulations oftentimes have been a little bit of a double-edged sword in cybersecurity, right? Sometimes they might accelerate adoption, but at other times they might create a little bit of a bottleneck. Um, so, with NIST finalizing the standards and DHS rolling out PQC initiatives, what's your take on it? Do you see compliance as a driver or a potential roadblock for quantum migration, or maybe both?
Um, so I'm gonna just make sure this is abundantly clear. This migration shouldn't be optional, right? It's not something that you should take and be, I can get it done later. As we kick the can down the road more and more, it becomes a bigger and bigger problem because then you're going to have a lot of privacy and confidentiality issues that you don't want. We don't know when a CRQC or cryptographically relevant quantum computer is going to come online. And the best thing to do is to be ahead of it. We are driving that kind of PQC migration. We've got these national memos, these national security memos. We've got executive orders. We've got OMB mandates. I don't think they're roadblocks. I think they're more of drivers. I think there's compliance within the federal space where we have to provide an annual inventory of our products of our cryptography every year, which is what we need. And then, but we need to be very aggressive on not only getting the inventory of the assets, but we also need to look at the data, which a lot of people forget. So we need to start inventorying our data. We need to start moving towards the migration activities that we talked about earlier in terms of getting the acquisition there. So I think we've got a lot of um, we've got a lot of work to do, and it's not a and NIST finalizing those algorithms were huge and getting that because it really said we're serious about this, and then the OMB memo that was released to the federal agencies was further indication that the government's serious about this, and you as an organization, if you want to do work with the government or even anywhere on the outside where you have a non-migrated system, and you're looking at an organization who has a migrated system, you may not be able to work with them. After a while, it's going to be, so you might put yourself out of business by waiting.
Yeah, and that's probably one way of enforcing and making sure that organizations are following those timelines, right? To say, well, if you're not taking these steps, then, well, likely you won't be able to sell into those government agencies any longer. In particular, if they're part of the critical infrastructure sectors like finance, energy, um, telco. So do you anticipate for the mandatory PQC migration, you use the term, this shouldn't be optional, right? This migration shouldn't be optional. So do you foresee any
Correct.
any more enforcement on those deadlines?
I think I've seen very positive influences from the administrations, past and present, uh, administrations on this, and that's a great thing because I think everyone understands the importance of this, and I'm hoping we are more aggressive on this with. With other mandates and pushing organizations um, to be more just more PQC ready. Uh, we can't stay in transition forever. The longer you stay in transition, the longer you're actually leaving vulnerabilities out uh, to other countries, other organizations, not so nice organizations. So if someone gets a CRQC, we always say a CRQC is like a nuclear weapon, right? It can be used, and the data is king right now. And if you've got people's data, you're not. It's not a good day. You're looking at things that I always use the analogy of when we broke the German code. No one said anything, and they just kept taking the data, and that might be the same thing that someone was a CRQC. That's what I would do. I would just sit there and watch TV with all this data, and just basically use it for my own good. So yeah,
Right.
not saying I would. I'm just giving an analogy before.
An analogy. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. 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 Well,
Yeah.
I think listening to how you lay out things, how you clarify some of the points. I think I'm sort of sensing four areas that are worthwhile putting a lot of effort in, and that is preparedness, mitigation, trust, and transparency in all internal as well as external conversations, and that should ultimately lead to a very resilient system environment within those organizations that do in fact migrate and take that important step forward to become more quantum safe for such a day when a cryptographically relevant quantum computer is available. And I fully agree, they're not going to tell us. They're just going to use it, and that'll be that. Now, one thing that you brought up is confidentiality in authentication, um, and that brings me to another question. And of course, early on, most of the PQC conversation really focuses on encryption. So basically protecting data from decryption once a cryptographically relevant quantum computer is available. So, what about authentication? If quantum computers can also break digital signatures, we could see massive failures in areas like identity management. And you brought up smart cards, right? Those are used for authentication, but also financial transactions, legal contracts. So, what's your take on that focus on encryption first? But shouldn't we also be more concerned about authentication breakage as well?
Yeah, I think we have to look at both. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, we definitely have to look at both, and encryption is definitely the one that we need to focus on, because that's going to protect us from everything else. But the authentication kind of falls in line and right behind there. So it's almost like a concurrent problem that we need to look at. It's uh, we have to encryption is needed. Authentication is the result. I think in that. So as long as you focus your energy, or your yeah, as long as you focus on encryption, I think the authentication part of it will fall in line as well. So I definitely think the encryption is probably a little bit ahead, but yeah, I think it should be a concurrent type project that you're working on.
Yeah, yeah. I think with the focus on encryption, we're hoping to address the harvest now, decrypt later, which seems to be the most imminent
Hmm.
threat for that long-lived data that we have in our systems today. Um, Now, speaking about different sort of technologies that are, equally important in your past life, you've worked in AI and machine learning. Um, so, we have to say AI every now and then. Otherwise, we're not doing our job. So do you see AI playing a role in helping with that cryptographic transition? Can AI assist us in areas like maybe cryptographic inventory or risk assessment, key management? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think uh, AI is always sprinkled into everything, right? We sprinkle AI into just about everything that we do today. So yeah, most products include something about machine learning, or have some degree of that. I think the automated cryptographic inventory tools are still maturing, so they could probably use some of that in terms, and I'm sure they have it in there. I think there's a lot of you know AI, depending on what scope you've done in terms of what algorithms you're using, that could be help with the data in formatting, looking for the patterns. When we're looking as far as maybe setting up something that's a supervised learning area where we have that structured data, and then have that unsupervised part where it's the unstructured data looking for the patterns. So I think AI will definitely help in both aspects, whether an organization has um, a lot of structured data and they know what it's supposed to look like, or they have a lot of unstructured data where we can look for patterns. But I think there's also the assets where AI can give you that risk tolerance in terms of, you need to update this. This is not this cryptographic algorithm is not updated. So I think there's a majority. There's always a possibility for that automation, that deep learning, that machine learning realm of AI to work. I mean, we're not in full general AI yet, but I think there's always algorithms that can be used and facilitate or really help in terms of in terms of getting our inventory of data and assets.
So it could be a useful tool in our toolbox if used
Yes,
correctly, if used for the right
if
purpose, right? Yeah,
if
yeah.
used correctly,
That's
not
that's great,
not
very interesting.
overused.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah, that's always that. Yeah. So of course, the U.S. is not the only country that's investing heavily in quantum computing and related research. Um, from where you sit, from a national security perspective, what's your take? Do you believe the U.S. is ahead in quantum cybersecurity in particular, or I mean, there's always a risk of falling behind, but where would you put the U.S. in sort of that global race towards um, the quantum computer, but also quantum cybersecurity?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I don't know if I can just quantify that fully, but I can tell you my perspective on it. It's, when we're looking at the harvest now, decrypt later problem, is you brought up earlier, we have that issue right now, right? And that's something that is a massive issue. Are we ahead of that? Probably not, right? We need to get some protections in for that. As far as quantum computing, we're still behind, some of the other countries as far as investment, but we are closing that gap very quickly. We have some scary intelligent people in the U.S. that are working on this stuff, and we're working with our international partners as well. Um, I still think, because we're still a little bit. We have some of the vendors that are pushing the quantum space. They've put articles out regarding several approaches to quantum computing, but I think, as far as our government, yeah, there. I will never say we're far ahead. We need to be aggressive on this because, as I stated before, this is on the lines of a nuclear weapon, and if we want to stay ahead, we have to invest in research on it.
Great. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on that. And of course, talking about the international, um, you know, communications between countries across jurisdictions. That of course ties into what we've been earlier talking about earlier with regards of interoperability and compatibility. Right. So from an international point of view, and of course, there's a lot of large organizations that are operating internationally. Um, do you see that there is a concern about different post quantum security regulations across jurisdictions? How do you see that playing out on a global scale between the different agencies, like for instance, CISA here and CSE in the UK or BSI in Germany, or
So I think the most of the countries are adopting the NIST algorithms. From what I understand, Germany might go with some other ones. I think Photochem for key exchange or anything like that, which is fine. I mean, I think there's, as long as we know what algorithms, and I think in that sense you have the ability to probably negotiate, using maybe like some TLS type mechanism to negotiate what algorithms are safe or what they're using. So they may not just use only, say, Photochem. They may use several different algorithms, and then you can negotiate several different PQC algorithms once they're coming out. I mean, NIST is coming out with more standards, so you never know. I mean, but uh, what I've seen on the international front, is that most of the countries are following the following the NIST algorithms. They've done so much work on that, and that was a really insightful project for the time that no one was thinking about that, and they really looked at that and said, yeah, all right, we need to get ahead of this. And I told you, early preparation for that date. And that as they did that, that's something that we need to look at. But the other countries are they're looking into other um, technologies. I think some of them are looking into QKD or looking into different types of uh, uh, quantum approaches. But I think with definitely the algorithms, we have the ability to probably, or we will have the ability to negotiate between what algorithms we use.
so talking about international collaboration, we're also halfway through the Supply Chain Integrity Month, which is traditionally, I understand, is in April, um, and that of course is an international month that CISA is participating together with other agencies across the globe. Maybe you want to share some information about that as well. Obviously, that doesn't only, include the quantum migration, but has many other aspects as well. But would be interesting for our listeners to hear a little bit about it, I'm sure.
Yeah, the supply chain is going to be really important in terms of how the PQC migration is handled. One is, um, learning about uh, the products that are in there and making sure that you coordinate with your product vendors that this is PQC ready. And I think those are things that we're looking at, is to make sure that we're very, working with the vendors very closely to make sure that they're that we understand their supply chain and how they plan to upgrade their products as we move forward. We have a lot of resources that we're putting out to kind of keep people updated. Just want to give a couple websites, if that's okay. They're DHS websites and CISA websites. There's DHS-DHS.gov/quantum, and that's a one that you can use. And then there's CISA. There's a CISA.gov /quantum, and that we can, and you can go anywhere on that. And we have all our products on there. And then of course the National Quantum Initiative, which is the www.quantum.gov. And so just making sure I said the DHS site ready. It's just dhs.gov/quantum. So not just dhs.gov, yeah, and then the CISA.gov/quantum. So those are the kind of primary areas where we've got a lot of products. We keep it updated, keep my team busy. They keep me busy. So we're trying to make sure everyone is aware, prepared, and ready for action.
Yep, and that's a perfect wrap up, because that ties us back into the APA that we were talking about at the beginning, right? It's like, be aware, get prepared, and then act, and hopefully on the way your car won't break down, because that
Oh
wouldn't
no,
be such
no,
a
no!
great
I
thing.
just bought a new one, so I'm hoping it doesn't break. We'll have some serious problems with that.
Did you buy a hybrid or a full electric?
Nope, I'm still not a convert yet. I'm still on gas. I'm a car
There you
guy,
go.
so I'm still on gas right now.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Garfield. This has been a great conversation. Any last words? Any last words of advice you wanna give to our listeners, and before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I just thank you for having me. I always want to make sure that we have a lot of visibility on quantum. Really want to make sure I drive home the APA format in terms of quantum, getting that awareness, preparedness, and action. I want to make sure that organizations that are diving into the quantum space, you establish that quantum project, establish that champion, do that inventory of cryptographic systems and data as best as possible, and start planning for that migration today, not even tomorrow, like yesterday, like if you can, because it is long, it is arduous, it is as we've seen with other migrations, it is not easy. So just do everything as early as possible.
Fantastic. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I know you're a busy man, so appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Take care.
The quantum era is already here. With the right tools, the right knowledge, and the right mindset, together we can face it head on. To find out more about PQ Shield and how our cutting-edge solutions can help you secure your data against the quantum threat, visit pqshield.com. Make sure to search for Shielded The Last Line of Cyber Defense in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. Don't forget to click subscribe so you never miss an episode. On behalf of the team here at PQ Shield, thanks for listening.